Hello guys, welcome back. Today we have another trade to announce, this time between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Montreal Canadiens, in a big deal involving Jesper Petry. Now we've been waiting so long to see a Jesper Petry trade, months and so much speculation, and it is finally here. He has been traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins in a massive deal for both the Habs and the Pens. But what is the trade package and which team wins this deal? Habs or Penguins? Watch till the end for the full trade analysis and all of the news, and make sure to hit that subscribe button if you are new. 50% of you guys aren't subscribed, so if you like hockey content, this channel is the place to be. Now, looking at the trade details for the Pens and Habs exchange, this is one of the weirdest trades I've seen of the past year, I can't lie. But we had a lot of background on this, of course, with the prior trade, where we made a video on that, of course, with the big deal exchanging Ty Smith from the Devils to the Penguins, and the Penguins end up giving John Marino to New Jersey. And I speculated in that video that we could see potentially that salary used in Pittsburgh's favor and that cap space used to get somebody else. I didn't say Jesper Petry, but they ended up going for Jesper Petry anyways just 2 hours later and going for a big defenseman on the market. Alright, so you're probably not expecting what the trade details actually are, but you know what? I'll just give it to you. To the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Canadiens have traded Jesper Petry and Ryan Poehling. In exchange, the Pittsburgh Penguins get Mike Matheson and a 4th round pick in 2023. Okay, let's break this down for a second, because when I saw this happening, when I saw Elliot Friedman tweeting out Jesper Petry to Pittsburgh, I thought, okay, maybe 2nd round pick, maybe a prospect like Pierre-Olivier Joseph, like we'll start to get the mind turning. Who could come back? Mike Matheson and a 4th round pick on top of the Habs giving Poehling to the Penguins. Are we sure? Are we sure this is the trade? Are we sure this is the trade? And I just remember a week ago, Ken Hughes saying, we're not going, in all quotes, we're not going to trade Jesper Petry unless it's the right trade for the Habs. Is this the right trade for the Habs? Unless there's something more on top of this, to me, Mike Matheson is really not that much of a difference between Petry, and he's signed for much longer, and you get a 4th round pick for Petry. I mean, I can kind of see where they're going for a little bit here, but also at the same time, I'm not really sure where Matheson fits into that defense, but do they have him as a big part of the future? There's just so many questions surrounding this trade, but again, it's way different from what I was expecting. Now, in a trade with Pittsburgh, it was to be expected that somebody came back, whether it was a player like Jason Zucker or a player like Mike Matheson. Even when I was saying, hey, if Mike Matheson comes back in the trade, maybe we get more picks on top of that, maybe we get some more picks for bringing in, or for the Habs for bringing in as much cap space as possible, or cap from the Penguins as possible. But no, it's a 4th round pick on top of that in 2023, which to me just makes no sense whatsoever, especially for this Habs team that is, again, trying to save as much cap space as possible. Mike Matheson, I mean, he saves $2 million now, but in the future, I mean, he has a modified no trade clause. Is that really much of a difference? Now, it's not like the Matheson deal is for like 8 more years. It's only for 4 more years, but at $4.875 million, and you compare that with Jesper Petry, who, with the Pittsburgh Penguins now, it's going to be really interesting. They add his contract on the books, with him making $6.25 million for the next 3 seasons, about $150,000 more than Kris Letang recently signed with his big contract. But the Penguins do bring on more cap space here, or they do bring more cap on the books with Petry compared to Matheson. But at the same time, the Habs do have that extra year of Matheson, even though he is lesser in the contract than Petry. He does have that modified no trade clause, which has a 18 no trade list, which does factor into things. And to me, it's interesting. I mean, you look at that left side, you now have Matheson, Edmonton, and Harris as probably the left side of defense. And I feel like this was a trade just to get maybe a pseudo replacement for Petry almost, and bring somebody in that can play. But again, it just doesn't make sense to me why this would be the return for Jesper Petry, or at least this would be the guy that you really base the trade around. I mean, Montreal, I don't think is, again, supposed to be competing anytime soon, but getting a player like Matheson, who's in his prime right now, had a good season with Pittsburgh last year, admittedly, but was a little bit sheltered, and I feel like this next year, when he's thrown to the Wolves, likely on that first pair, things could get just a little bit messy. But I feel like, honestly, for the Pittsburgh Penguins, even if there might not be much any salary retained here, or at least from what I know right now, I think this is an amazing deal for them. Poehling could be a 4th line center for them, and you got Petry, who, alongside Kris Letang, you could have a very interesting defense core next year. And although Petry this last year was horrible, he was better under Marty St. Louis, and I think in a much better team with maybe lesser minutes, Petry can be still really solid at his age. And considering considering the most the Penguins gave up was Matheson and a 4th-round pick, and they got Poehling back. To me, it's an absolute home run deal for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And again, I just have so many questions over what this really shows for the Canadiens, what this means for their direction, having Matheson on the team. And again, we knew that there had to be some cap going back to Montreal, but the fact that they couldn't get more than a 4th-round pick back after Matheson is my biggest problem. You couldn't get like a 3rd? You're giving up Poehling as well. Like, to me, it's just nuts how there was so much speculation and so much talk around Kent Hughes not trading Petry and trading him for the right price. But this, again, how is this the right price? A 4th-round pick and Matheson? It just makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I feel like for Montreal, they're in this rebuilding direction. They don't need Matheson. And yes, he's nice to have, obviously, but still, only getting a 4th-round pick back, still, it makes me so flustered, because I was expecting so much more from a Jeff Petry deal. Now, I will say, if Jeff Petry does play like he did in the early season of this last year, then I think for the Penguins, it's a pretty rough trade for them to get after, but I do have some belief that Petry, at least in the first year with the Penguins, will do quite well under that system, and I just see the situation here for Montreal, and I just, again, come back confused. Again, they do save some space. They got now $2.3 million of cap space to work with, but it's just such a weird trade for me. And I feel like for the Penguins, they're definitely the winners in this trade, but I think for them, there's also potential that this falls back a little bit in their faces. But I do think getting Poehling back is a really interesting add for them, and also is a pretty cheap player as well to bring onto the roster. But again, I just come up blank with this situation for Montreal. Unless there's something bigger to this trade, unless there's more deals down the line, including Matheson, or there's now more deals potentially with the extra cap space they have without retaining any salary on Petry. That's the only way I see this really being that much of a substantial deal for the Habs, and considering how much work Jeff Petry put in with this team, considering how good he was with the team, this was the return you got. It'll be interesting to see what happens, and I'm hoping that for the Habs, Matheson plays like he did last year in a much bigger role somehow, and that he's able to prove me wrong and be this top 4 defenseman. But I feel like for the Habs, it'll be one of those contracts, again, they might need to move in a couple of years' time. And again, considering that modified no trade clause, it makes things tricky down the line too. But I will say the team that wins this deal is the Pittsburgh Penguins, and for the Montreal Canadiens, again, there's got to be more trades down the line, but for now, I'm going to stay patient and see what Kent Hughes is planning, because as of right now, I'm really confused. I'm really confused. But let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think about this Jeff Petry deal? Who do you think wins, the Habs or the Penguins? And what do you think about the return for Jeff Petry and everything? Let me know your thoughts down below. Of course, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video or stream. Goodbye.